Hello, this is Edel O'Hara, social worker with the South Lee Autism Service. Our department has put together some information for parents about staying well during COVID-19. We hope that this information can support you in some small way at this time.
COVID-19 has changed all of our lives to varying degrees, but at the very least, we are all living with a lot of uncertainty at the moment. Our routines have had to be adjusted. Children are at home now full time, and our activities outside the home are very restricted, and our personal interactions have much reduced. And I'm conscious that some of you will have experienced much more of an impact even than this. I want to acknowledge the loss for all of us, children included. There has been a loss of our usual way of life. Within your family alone, there may be a feeling of a lack of personal space. There may be worries about jobs and money. You may have noticed your child's anxiety has increased. There may be real upset about not seeing friends and families. And there may be great fear about the virus. So just to acknowledge that. And also just to say that while we have the commonality of the experience, each of our own individual perspective and experience of this is unique. I was really struck by the varying reactions to the school closures in my contact with parents over the last couple of weeks. Many were really missing school in their family's daily life. Some were really missing knowing their children were learning and interacting every day in school. And some were missing the break that school afforded them in their own week. But equally, many weren't missing school at all. They were in fact experiencing kind of a great relief because school may often be one of the most challenging parts of your child's life. So just to acknowledge that there's no right or wrong experience of this. And just like there's no right or wrong experience, there's no right or wrong feeling. All feelings are valid. You may find you're experiencing a real mix of feelings, or even a roller coaster of them at the moment. Maybe 1 minute upset, the next hopeful. There may be a lot of ups and downs in the day, and this is really normal for what you're going through. And again, just to remember that you're never wrong for feeling a certain way. If you're sad, that's okay. If you're angry, that's okay. If you're worried, that's okay. And if you're okay, that's okay too. And just as I said earlier, you may feel many of these in any given day. So there's just two really important facts that I wanted to share with you about your coping. Firstly, that you have already coped with so much in your life already. And then secondly, that many of these same coping tools are helping you and your family right now. So this might be a good time to pause and take a little time to identify these coping tools to yourself. And resilience. Resilience can be defined as the capacity to bounce back from negative forces. I've always liked the analogy of the fishing buoy in terms of explaining resilience, how it's pushed underwater by a force, but that it always pops back up. Sometimes it can take a while to pop back up depending on the force, but it always does. And equally, what helps us to pop back up tends to be unique to us. So I think this might also be a good time to think about what has helped you pop back up in your life so far. I'm sure there's many factors, many of them you're probably calling on and using already during this time. We thought it might be helpful to introduce a framework, kind of a structure, to make well-being feel like a more practical concept. So some research was undertaken in 2008, and the outcome of this was they identified 5 ways to well-being. It compiled all the international research on well-being at the time, and it found these 5 proven ways to improve your well-being. And these are to connect, to be active, to take notice, to keep learning, and to give. So I'm just going to briefly give a little explanation of each of those. So in terms of connect, as you well know, your relationships with families, friends, colleagues, and your wider community are important for your well-being. And when we connect with others, we're nurturing these relationships, which can in turn help us feel happy and improve our well-being. And also, as you well know, regular physical activity is associated with a greater sense of well-being. Physical activity can help change the chemicals in our brain, which can result in a positive mood change. So the third way to well-being was identified as taking notice. Paying attention to the present moment, to your own thoughts, feelings, and to the world around you can improve our well-being. And using our senses to take notice can be especially grounding. Really taking the time to look at something, really listening to something, or noticing the taste or the smell that's around you can be very grounding. Learning is the fourth way to well-being. Learning new skills positively affects our well-being. It can boost our confidence, self-esteem, and give us a sense of purpose in life. And the final way to well-being, giving. Giving, as we know, is good for others, but it can also be good for ourselves. Any act of kindness, whether small or large, can make us feel happier and more satisfied with our lives. And importantly, too, kindness towards ourselves boosts our well-being as well. So as well as explaining the framework, we thought it would be helpful to come up with some ideas towards, practicing ways to well-being, particularly at the moment in the constrained lives we're having to lead. So look, these are just some ideas, some simple ideas that we've come up with. I'm sure you'll have some much better ones yourself, ones that will more uniquely suit you. But we thought just as a way of kind of kick-starting and showing, I suppose, some simple options. So in terms of connecting then, maybe texting an old friend. Some family movie time could really help with connection in the family. Taking a short walk, trying some stretches in terms of being active. And in terms of taking notice, maybe noticing the breath in your body, a very simple but very grounding thing to do. Same as savouring a snack, noticing how it looks, tastes, smells and feels can be very grounding. And in terms of learning, maybe trying a new recipe, learning something new about someone, maybe an especially easy one. And giving, just the simple actions of thanking someone, telling someone you appreciate them, maybe sharing a positive news story. So look, as I said, these are just ideas that we thought about, particularly in terms of how we're living at the moment. And you'll have many others that are better and that will suit you more. I thought it might be a good time to also talk about developing your awareness, I suppose, of negative stress in yourself. We're all experiencing a certain amount of it at the moment. But I suppose in the terms of taking notice, it can be good to start to check in with ourselves, to start to notice when our tank is draining during the day at the moment. For some of us, it can be physical sensations. Some of us, it's negative thinking is the first thing that creeps in. Sometimes tiredness and sometimes irritability for others. I suppose the idea with this is just catching it as early as we can and prioritising ourselves in whatever way we can, big or small. I mean, it'll very much be only in small ways at the moment. But just to kind of reiterate that those small and particularly regular inputs of well-being can make a big difference. And this next slide really just repeats that, the idea of small actions having a big impact. We thought it might be helpful to introduce a couple of other frameworks, just knowing that different things resonate for different people. So one particular framework, or I suppose perspective, is the idea of what we can and can't control. So I've put a visual there in relation to the coronavirus, specifically around what we can and can't control. And as you well know, a lot of what impacts us in our lives is not within our control. But remembering this can allow us to let go of things that aren't in our control and that we're not responsible for. This in turn can allow us to focus our energies on what is within our control. And this can increase our feelings of well-being. So your list of what you can control and potentially what you can't control will be uniquely yours. So it might be helpful just to think about those, and to think about maybe particularly what you can control and what you are already controlling day to day, and how to kind of nurture and cultivate this. So another framework that I thought might be useful is the framework of self-compassion. This is actually a proven, an evidence-based way of increasing well-being and managing stress. So there's 3 elements to it. The first is simply self-kindness, that idea of treating and speaking to yourself like you would to a close friend. It can be a very small but powerful change in terms of how we treat ourselves, and therefore in terms of how we feel. The second element is common humanity. It's really, really normal that when we're upset about difficulties that we can feel very alone. But it can be helpful to remember that things going wrong and the accompanying feelings are all part of the shared human experience. The third element then is mindfulness, and in this context, mindfulness just means noticing that your thoughts and feelings come and go. Even the big and powerful ones, they come and they go. And to try and let that happen without too much worry or judgment. So just that approach to ourselves, it has research to say that it helps us feel better. Kristen Neff, the creator of this, is a parent of an autistic child herself. And I've put her website there at the end for anybody who'd like to look into it more. The final kind of concept or framework I wanted to talk about was the idea of good enough parenting. So this is a psychological theory, and it's been around a very long time, this idea of being a good enough parent. And what it tells us is it's not good for our children to have perfect parents. That actually the best type of parenting is good enough parenting. I've put a link to further reading for anybody that might be interested. And I suppose I just wanted to share that I've stretched this good enough concept far beyond my parenting in my life. Being a good enough friend, daughter, colleague has really taken pressure off me at different times in my life. So look, finally, I suppose I wanted to share perhaps the most important words, the words of another parent in a similar situation. Chrissy Kelly is a mother of 2 children with autism, and I've put her blog there at the end of the screen. But Chrissy says that something happens the instant you become a parent. This beautiful new soul is now your absolute everything, and you no longer come first. In fact, you usually come last, and sometimes not even at all. Raising children is full of beauty, heartache, and triumphs, but raising children with autism brings with it challenges that at times feel insurmountable. You are no longer important because every ounce of your energy goes into helping them. And she says it took her not 1 but 2 autism diagnoses to realise that the very best thing I can do for my children is to take care of me. So ever so finally, I just wanted to say thank you for those of you that have managed to stay with me, and also extend a wish and a hope to you from our social work department and from our Southleigh Autism Service that we really hope you and your loved ones stay safe and well throughout this difficult time. So thank you, and be well.